You know, kid, the funniest part about pain is how everyone swears they understand it. They pat you on the back, throw out a few empty words, and think that's enough to patch up the bleeding. But they don't get it. They can't. See, real pain doesn't ask for permission, doesn't need an invitation. It just shows up one day, unpacks its bags, and makes itself at home in your head, your heart, your soul. It dines on your fears, drinks your insecurities, and settles into your bones until you start to believe it's always been there. They underestimated you, thought you'd fold, thought the weight would break you. And for a while, you almost did. Almost. That's the key word, isn't it? Almost. But you didn't. You're still standing. Even if you're a bit more battered and a lot more bitter, they can't stand that. It eats them alive to see you still breathing, still clawing your way forward, inch by bloody inch. And you gotta make sure it keeps eating them until there's nothing left. They're all the same, really. People like that. They'll try to chain you to the version of yourself that's easiest for them to handle. Weak, confused, unsure. They'll throw every mistake in your face, twist the knife, with every chance they get. Why? Because it makes them feel better about their own miserable, hollow lives. They need you to stay down. Because if you rise, if you actually become something, then every excuse they've ever made for their own failures turns to ash in their mouths. Your strength exposes their weakness. Your survival mocks their cowardice. See, the world isn't interested in your sob story. It's not going to hold your hand, whisper sweet nothings, and tell you everything's going to be all right. No, it'll watch you bleed out on the pavement without so much as blinking. That's why you got to be something worse than what haunts you. You've got to become the nightmare that keeps them awake at night. The reason they flinch at shadows and lock their doors twice. Don't you get it yet? That darkness inside you isn't something to bury. It's a gift. Use it. Mold it. Let it sharpen your edges until they're too scared to even look you in the eyes. You want revenge? Good. But make it last. Make it cold and slow and suffocating. Make them watch as every word they use to tear you down becomes the reason they choke. You see, strength isn't about how much you can lift or how hard you can hit. No, it's about how much you can endure and still keep coming back. It's smiling with bloody teeth and laughing when they spit in your face. Because you know something they don't. You know that every scar is just proof that you survived what should have killed you. And that terrifies them more than anything. They're not afraid of what you've done. They're afraid of what you're capable of. They're terrified that the person they tried to bury is about to claw his way out of the dirt, stronger and more ruthless than ever. And that's exactly what you're gonna do. You're not here to prove them wrong. You're here to show them why they should have never crossed you in the first place. Forget about being liked, about being understood. That's for people who have the luxury of innocence. You lost that a long time ago. Your job now is to become a storm they can't ignore. To tear down everything they built with your name on their tongues and remind them that the devil isn't something hiding under their beds. It's standing right in front of them, smiling. They thought breaking you would be enough, that you'd stay down, that you'd just accept the scraps they tossed at you. Fools. You're gonna rise so high that their necks snap, just trying to watch. And when that day comes, when they're crawling back with fake apologies and trembling hands, you're not even gonna waste the breath to laugh. You'll just keep moving forward, leaving them to rot in the ruins of their own pathetic games. But make no mistake, this isn't about forgiveness or finding peace. This is about war. This is about making sure that every single one of them regrets underestimating you until their dying breath. Because some people don't learn until they're bleeding. So make them bleed. Make them remember. Make them wish they'd never looked down on you. They'll call you cold, heartless. They'll say you've changed. Good. That's the point. Let them choke on their own lies while you build your empire on the ashes of everything they took from you. Let them see what happens when you turn pain into power, betrayal into a blade, and silence into a war cry. At the end of the day, you don't need anyone to understand your darkness. You just need them to respect it, to fear it, to remember that the boy they tried to break is long dead, and in his place stands something they can't even begin to comprehend. So keep moving. Keep fighting. Let them regret every second they thought you were weak. Because in the end, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about making sure they never forget the day they decided to make an enemy out of you. And trust me, they will regret it. Oh, they will scream their regrets to the sky. But by then, it'll be far too late. They'll tell you to let it go, to move on, to find peace. But peace is a lie they tell themselves to sleep better at night. They want you docile, numb, easy to ignore. Because if you rise, if you find a way to turn that pain into power, then it forces them to look in the mirror and face just how insignificant they really are. See, people don't want you to heal. They want you to forget. They want you to pretend that the knife in your back was just a misunderstanding, that the betrayal was a lesson, that the scars are just stories to tell. But you and I both know that's not how it works. Those wounds fester. They itch and burn until the only way to silence them is to become something more, something darker, something that makes them wish they'd never crossed you in the first place. Forgiveness? That's just another leash, another way for them to pretend they're the victims. They'll paint you as the villain, twist the story until your anger is the crime, not their betrayal. But villains, at least, have purpose. Villains get things done. So embrace it. Wear the mask they gave you. Let them see what happens when you stop trying to prove your innocence and start embracing your wrath. Because the truth is, you owe them nothing, not an explanation, not a chance at redemption, not even the courtesy of a warning before you burn their little world to the ground. Mercy is for saints and sheep, and you are neither. You see, pain is a weapon, one that can either sharpen you or shatter you, and they've spent so long trying to break you that they never stop to think what might happen if you survived. Because survival changes a person. It carves out all the weakness and fills the gaps with rage and resolve. It makes you hungry, makes you ruthless, makes you look at the world with eyes that have seen too much to ever be innocent again. That's what they don't get. That's why they keep underestimating you, because they can't see past their own arrogance to the monster they're creating. They thought they were writing your ending, but the truth is, you haven't even gotten started, because now there's no room for hesitation, no space for doubt. Now, every breath you take is a declaration of war. Every step is a promise that one day they'll pay for every time they laughed at your pain, every time they turned their backs when you needed them. So stop looking for closure. Stop waiting for them to apologize, to see the error of their ways. Some people don't learn from their mistakes, they just double down. They convince themselves they're justified, that somehow your suffering is your own fault. Fine. Let them believe that. It'll make it all the sweeter when they finally realize just how badly they've miscalculated. You owe it to yourself to become everything they said you couldn't be. To take every insult, every slight, every time they told you that you weren't enough, and use it to build an empire, one stone at a time, with bloodied knuckles and a smile that says, "I told you so." Because the best revenge isn't just living well. It's becoming the nightmare they can't escape. It's making sure that every time they close their eyes, they see your face staring back at them, reminding them of just how badly they screwed up. They wanted you to stay broken. They wanted you quiet, compliant, easy to forget. But monsters aren't forgotten. They're feared. They're respected. They're everything that keeps the weak up at night. They'll start to notice it too. That shift in your eyes, the way you stop flinching at their barbs, the way your silence isn't submission, but a storm gathering strength. They'll whisper about how you've changed, about how you've become so cold, so distant, so ruthless. And that's the point, isn't it? To make them realize too late that they didn't bury you, they planted you. That every moment you spent in the dark was just another root, digging deeper. Another reason to rise stronger. They won't understand it at first, won't see the consequences of their actions until it's far too late. They'll keep laughing right up until the day that laugh catches in their throats. When the tables turn, and they find themselves looking up at the person they swore could never make it. And when that day comes, don't hesitate. Don't soften. Make sure they choke on every lie they ever told about you. That every bridge they burned becomes the fire that lights your way forward. Because people like that, they don't deserve your forgiveness. They deserve to watch, powerless, as everything they built crumbles beneath your feet. They deserve to understand in the last moments that the person they looked down on is the one holding all the cards. You need to understand, kid, this world isn't divided into heroes and villains. It's divided into the weak and the strong, the prey and the predators, and all those morals, those high-minded ideals they preach about turning the other cheek and rising above. Those are just pretty lies they tell to keep you compliant, to keep you questioning yourself while they sharpen their knives behind your back. But you don't have the luxury of lies anymore. You've seen too much, felt too much, lost too much to ever go back. The only way out now is forward, through the blood and the ashes and the bones of anyone who tries to drag you back down. Make them wish they'd never underestimated you. Make them remember your name, not as a memory, but as a warning. Let them live with the knowledge that every breath they take is mercy you granted. That the only reason they're still standing is because you haven't decided to end it yet. Because some people only understand one language, the language of power, of consequences, of watching everything they love turn to dust. So keep going, keep fighting. Build your empire on the lessons they've taught you. Trust no one, expect betrayal, and never forget that pain is a better teacher than kindness ever was. And when they finally come crawling back, broken and desperate and full of apologies, don't even waste your breath. Just smile, turn your back, and let them choke on their regrets. Because that's the secret, isn't it? Strength doesn't just make you powerful, it makes you untouchable. And the strongest revenge is walking away without a scratch while they burn in the fire they lit themselves. So go on. Make them regret ever doubting you. Make them wish they'd put a bullet in you when they had the chance. Because the moment you stop caring about what they think, the moment you stop needing their approval, you become unstoppable. You become everything they're afraid of. You become the nightmare that haunts them until their dying breath. And that, kid, that's how you win. And here's the cruel irony of it all. They still think they're the heroes of this story. They've rewritten the script so many times that they actually believe their own lies. In their version, you're the villain. The one who couldn't just play nice, couldn't just swallow the pain and keep your head down. They'll call you heartless. Say you've become everything you once hated, without ever realizing that they're the ones who forced you into this role. They put the knife in your hand, painted the target on your back, and now they want to act surprised when you start fighting back. The audacity is almost amusing. Almost. They'll pretend they don't remember the times they left you bleeding, the times they laughed at your struggles, the times they stepped on your fingers while you were trying to climb out of the pit. They'll shrug it off, say you're being dramatic, that it's all in your head. Gaslighting. It's what cowards do best. But you know better. You remember every slight, every insult, every time they dismissed you as if you were nothing more than a bad joke. Those memories, they're not wounds anymore. They're armor. They're what you wear into battle every single day. A constant reminder of why you can't go back, why you can't afford to be soft ever again. See, the thing they don't get is that rage isn't the opposite of pain. It's the evolution of it. It's pain that's been sharpened and refined, pain that's learned to stand up and bare its teeth. It's not something you control. It's something that drives you, something that keeps you warm on those nights when the silence is deafening and the weight of everything you've lost makes it hard to breathe. They call it bitterness. You call it survival, because that's what it takes to keep going when everything and everyone has turned against you. A willingness to become the monster they tried to make you believe you were. And the funny part is, they'll never see it coming. They're too busy basking in their own self-righteousness to notice the shadows closing in. They'll keep playing their little power games, whispering behind closed doors, smiling that fake smile that never quite reaches their eyes. But you're not playing anymore. You're done trying to fit into their little boxes, done apologizing for not being weak enough to break. Let them talk. Let them think they've won. The louder they scream your name, the sweeter it'll be when you rip everything they care about out from under them. It's not about vengeance, not really. It's about balance, about making sure they understand that actions have consequences, that every time they left you in the dark, they were just feeding the fire. You want to be the villain in their story? Fine. But you're going to be the kind of villain that keeps them awake at night, the kind they tell their kids about when the lights go out. Not because it's what you wanted, but because it's what they created. But here's the thing. Destruction is easy. Anyone can burn a bridge, stab someone in the back, walk away while the ashes settle. Real power is in building something out of the wreckage, in taking every insult and every betrayal, using it to lay the foundation for something they can never touch. That's the part they'll never understand, that their hatred isn't something to hide from. It's fuel. It's proof that you're getting to them. That every step forward you take makes them grind their teeth just a little harder. And the best part, when they finally come to you, when they finally realize that they need you, that their empire of lies is crumbling and you're the only one left standing, you're gonna look them dead in the eyes and tell them to choke on their apologies. Because some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some wounds aren't meant to heal. Some people aren't worth saving. You want to make them regret underestimating you. Then you need to make sure that the next time they even think about crossing you, they remember the taste of blood and the sound of everything they love crashing down around them. You need to become the consequence they never saw coming, the retribution they thought they'd escaped, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because if you don't, if you let them walk away unscathed, they'll just do it again. They'll find someone else to stab, someone else to manipulate, and the cycle will start all over. So don't stop. Don't even slow down. Make every move count, every breath a reminder that they built this monster with their own 2 hands. Make them understand that every time they laughed at your pain, they were digging their own graves. That every time they tried to make you small, they were forging the chains that are gonna drag them down one by one. And when it's over, when they're nothing but shadows and regrets and bitter memories, you're gonna walk away without looking back. Not because you've forgiven them, but because they're not even worth the satisfaction of watching them burn. You're gonna keep moving forward, eyes on the horizon, feet unsteady but determined, because that's what real strength looks like. It's not about winning or losing. It's about refusing to quit, about refusing to let them write the ending to a story that was never theirs to tell. And in the silence that follows, in the hollow echoes of their shattered pride and empty apologies, they'll finally understand. They'll realize that it wasn't the pain that broke you, but the lies. That it wasn't the darkness that changed you, but the light you had to sacrifice just to survive. And maybe, just maybe, they'll see that the only reason you're still standing is because you stopped caring about their version of the story a long time ago. Because in the end, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that no matter how deep they buried you, you were always gonna claw your way back. That no matter how many times they tried to silence you, your voice was never theirs to take. So stand up. Show them that the worst mistake they ever made wasn't hurting you. It was thinking you wouldn't get back up. Make them regret every second they thought you were weak. Make them understand that the person they tried to break is gone. And in his place stands something far more dangerous. Because that's the truth they can't admit, isn't it? That your strength isn't just something you built in spite of them. It's something you built because of them. That every scar is a lesson. Every betrayal, a reminder that mercy is a luxury you can't afford. So let them talk. Let them spin their little stories. And then, when they're least expecting it, show them exactly what happens when you stop trying to be the hero and start embracing the monster they created. And trust me, they'll regret underestimating you until their last dying breath. But here's the thing about regret. It doesn't heal, doesn't fix, doesn't undo a damn thing. It just lingers, a parasite in the mind, feeding off what-ifs and too-lates. And for them, for the ones who spat on your name and wrote you off like yesterday's trash, it's gonna rot them from the inside out. Every time they see you rise, every time they hear your name whispered with respect instead of disdain, it'll twist that knife a little deeper. They'll smile to your face, mask the fear with forced laughter and shaky words, but behind closed doors, they'll tear themselves apart, wondering how they could have been so blind, how they could have mistaken kindness for weakness, silence for surrender. They'll tell themselves it wasn't their fault, that you were always destined to turn out like this, cold, ruthless, unrecognizable. They'll rewrite the story, paint you as the villain, the monster lurking in the dark. But the truth is simpler than that. They didn't fear you for what you were. They feared you for what you could become. Because deep down, they always knew. They saw the fire in your eyes, the defiance in your silence, the way you never stayed down for long. They saw the potential, the strength simmering beneath the surface, and it scared them senseless. That's why they tried so hard to break you, because they knew that if you ever figured out what you were truly capable of, they'd never be able to stop you. And now, that day's here, and they've got no one to blame but themselves. Let them try to spin the narrative, try to turn the tables, try to make you out to be the villain of their pathetic little fairy tale. But the difference between you and them, you don't need their approval. You don't need them to understand or agree or even admit the truth. All you need is for them to feel it. That cold, creeping realization that no amount of lies or excuses is going to save them now. That you've become everything they feared, and worse, that you did it without their help, without their permission, without even sparing them a second thought. That's the part they hate the most. Not that you survived, not that you came back stronger, but that you stopped caring about what they thought, that their opinions, their whispers, their judgments don't matter anymore. That all their efforts to destroy you did nothing but forge something harder, colder, sharper. Because the truth is, they need you to hate them. They need to believe that they're still a part of your story, that they're still relevant, that they still hold some kind of power over you. They can live with being the villain, with being hated, as long as it means they're not forgotten. But indifference, that terrifies them. Watching you move on, build something new, succeed without even looking back, that's the real nightmare. Because it means they never mattered at all. It means all the pain they caused, all the nights they made you question your worth, all the scars they left. It was nothing but a footnote, a stepping stone on your way to becoming something they can't touch. And that's the kind of revenge that doesn't fade. That's the kind of vengeance that keeps them awake at night, staring at the ceiling, drowning in all the things they'll never be. But you can't stop there. You can't just survive. You have to thrive. You have to take every dream they tried to crush and build it twice as high, twice as strong, until it casts a shadow so long they can't escape it. Every time they turn around, they should be reminded of what they tried to bury and failed. Every success you carve out with your own 2 hands should be a reminder that the only reason they matter at all is because they failed to destroy you. And it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right all along, that you were never the problem, that their cruelty was a reflection of their own emptiness, not a judgment of your worth. They'll never admit it, of course. Pride won't let them. Even when they're kneeling in the ashes of their own arrogance, they'll choke on their excuses rather than say the words, "I was wrong." But that's fine. You don't need their confession, don't need their guilt. All you need is for them to watch, helpless and seething, as you turn their doubts into dust and their insults into armor. They'll start to hate themselves too, slowly, quietly, in the dead of night, when the silence is deafening and the regrets start to suffocate. They'll replay every moment, every choice, every lie they told to justify stabbing you in the back, and it'll eat them alive, because they'll see it, clear as day. The moment they crossed the line, the moment they chose betrayal over loyalty, cowardice over courage, and that realization, that's a poison that doesn't fade, doesn't dull, doesn't let go. It festers, turns their dreams to nightmares, their laughter to ashes, and there's no cure for it, no absolution, no escape. That's the justice they don't see coming. Not the revenge, not the reckoning, but the slow, inevitable decay of everything they thought they stood for. The slow collapse of every lie they told themselves to sleep at night. That's the beauty of it, really. The way their own guilt becomes the gallows. The way their own cowardice becomes the blade. Because in the end, the only thing that haunts a traitor more than the consequences of their actions is the silence that follows when there's no one left to lie to. So keep going, keep building, keep rising. Let the pain sharpen you. Let the scars remind you of everything you've survived. Let the hatred fuel you until there's nothing left but fire and iron, and a will that refuses to break. Because the truth is, they can't stop you. They never could. All they can do is watch as the world forgets their names and remembers yours instead. And when it's all said and done, when they're nothing but shadows and whispers and bitter memories, you'll look back, not to forgive, not to forget, but to remind yourself why you can never be that weak again. To remind yourself that mercy is a fool's game, and that trust is a luxury for people who haven't seen what you've seen. Because in the end, the only justice in this world is the kind you carve out with your own two hands. The only truth is the one that survives the fire. And the only strength that matters is the kind that makes them regret ever thinking you were weak. So let them talk, let them hate, let them drown in the mess they made. Your job isn't to save them or convince them or even understand them. Your job is to rise, to build, to become something they can't tear down, can't touch, can't ever forget. Your strength isn't just a weapon, it's a warning, a promise that no matter how hard they try, no matter how many times they come for you, they will never win. That every scar is just another reason to keep fighting. Every betrayal, just another brick in the fortress you're building around your soul. And when they finally realize that you're not coming back, that the person they tried to break is gone for good, they'll know what true regret feels like. They'll know that some mistakes can't be forgiven, that some debts can't be paid, that some sins echo forever. And that, kid, that's how you make them regret underestimating you.